I don't know how easy it is to do on your phone. Okay, so I'm gonna get started. Someone will check in the chat real quick, see if there's any stragglers, and then we'll get going. Thank you for recording. Okay, so I'm sharing my desktop. As you can see, I don't have any fancy themes or anything like that. For me, this screen here is the easiest on my eyes. So I really did like all the other custom features that Fantasy Grounds provides, but I don't really care for bright screens. So I kind of like this because it's toned down. It's kind of like a default. I don't like the stark white bright screen that they give you for the official Dungeons and Dragons. It looks cool, but it's way too bright. So when I'm actually creating stuff, I use as dull as I can. I don't use any stickers or decals. I just think that's all distracting, and it is, I think it might even be a memory overhead thing. But regardless, I just keep my desktop as plain and simple as possible. And as you can tell, I have my desktop laid out a certain way that I like it. Now you guys may like it different. I like it like this. It's simple, it's basic, it's nothing fancy. I usually have my dice tower right next to my dice, so I don't have to reach all the way across. Normally, this thing sits here by default. So I usually, before I start a session, I will grab it, unlock it, move it over, and then it will make it easier for people to find the dice tower. I'm not sure if you guys use the dice tower or not, but if you want to know how to turn it on, I'm going to show you. This is something that baffled me when I first started playing. So you have some settings in Fantasy Grounds that you need to probably consider and look into. Now, I don't know what everything does, but I do know a few things, and I'm going to show you that. So I go into the options, which is on the upper right portion of your screen. And depending on what I don't know what theme you guys are using, but I use this basic one. So I click the options, and the options window comes up. Now from there, I don't normally mess with this stuff, but I do use sound in my sessions, so I have that turned on. So if you're going to use Syrinscape or anything like that, that you have to enable that, and you also have to have the modules loaded to support it. Another thing is turn auto center map. I turn that off because for some reason I just don't like the way Fantasy Grounds will auto center the map. So I turn that off. It's a preference. Now down here where it says game GM, there's a couple things you have to enable to get that dice tower to show up. First of all, where it says chat show GM roles, well, when I first started, I was under the impression that it's going to show all my roles. Well, it will if you don't enable the dice tower, I believe. Is that correct? Anybody?
No, that's not correct.
Okay.
Your GM roles are pretty much your own roles. If you have it enabled, it'll show your basic attack rolls,
Okay.
but attributes, skills, etc. on your NPCs will still remain invisible.
That's kind of what I thought, but when I first started, I thought that meant that my players are going to see all the roles. And that's not the case. So you want to turn that on, make sure that's on. Chat, show portraits. Yes, I leave that on. And at the very bottom of this section, it says table, dice tower. That needs to be enabled. So if you turn that on and the show GM roles, that dice tower will show up. And then you will simply right click on it and lock or unlock it as need be. Some people put it in other places. I put mine right there. On the actual box chat, you can also unlock that chat window. And I'm going to actually go to one more issue. I'll leave that off to the side. But in this box chat here, you can resize that also. So you can clear messages, you can unlock it and change where you want to lay it out. I usually leave it here, and I do the whole layering effect. So the combat tracker I usually have about there. Depends on how much stuff I got going on. But usually I have it laid out like that. So right now I'm kind of talking about setup, like how you set up your table. The dice, I'll change the color if someone else has, if there's too many other colors, I'll just go to a black and white dice. As far as the party sheet goes, normally I have it about like that, and I'll have it layered with other items, and I usually leave it over here. And what I find is that if you have the party sheet active, when you actually want to use it, you don't have to exit out of everything with the X. If you just simply click on the token itself onto the right where the banners are, you can close them that way without losing your position. See, if you actually click on the upper right, it'll do that. I don't think there's one for the chat window, but for a lot of the other windows, you can just open and close them using those buttons up on top. There's a calendar, so you don't have to use the X to get out of everything. Usually I'll just use those buttons up on top there. That way I'm not losing my positioning. And thank God for the new update where Fantasy Grounds pretty much keeps or saves most of this. So if I exit and I come back into the same session, these settings should pretty much still be there. And that was a real pain because you had to manually set this up every time. And that was a godsend as a DM anyways. So anyhow, this is the party sheet that I have for my group. As you can see, I have a pretty good group, a pretty good size. And generally, I use a party sheet to do a number of things, and we'll discuss that later. But I wanted to show you the layout of the stuff first, and then of course there's a story. For myself, I have my own story. I have a bunch of stuff that I've purchased and collected, but I have my own campaign, the Silvery Moon campaign, and I did a lot of this on my own. And basically, I just made a cheat sheet and notes and things like that. But normally, if you're going to buy or purchase stuff from Wizards of the Coast or Smiteworks, the stories will be broken up like this. And these pretty much are almost like notes for me. So when I use my DM's cheat sheet, I just click on, let's see, I have a DM's guide to Silvery Moon, and that is linked to everything I need to run the encounters within the Silvery Moon or Silver Marches region. And I even have notes in there that I've made myself. And what I tend to do is just take my source information, make one big story, and I'll just dump it all into one heading. I don't even go through the modular setup like a lot of the modules that you buy. And then I'll just link in all the photos that I collected prior to making the module. So this is all homebrew. Most of the stuff isn't purchased. I went and did a lot of this research myself. I went on to Wikipedia. I went online. I looked in forums. I had some of my own materials, and I kind of cobbled it together just using the story mode. I really don't like it broken up, the story too much. I like everything in one shot. I don't have to dig around and click and open windows. I actually link everything I need, or most everything I need, into this area. And then if I have any story pieces or information, I'll just clean up all the text that I pasted in here, depending on where the source is from. And then I'll just start plugging in photos and encounters and things like that, tables where they need to go or where they would apply. So this for me is more or less a work in progress. It's not complete. It probably never will be, but I can always load it back up and add to it, and I'll know the format and I'll know how to use it every time because I'm the one that created it. When I buy modules from third party or even the official stuff, I get lost sometimes because I have no idea how they linked it, or sometimes I have to dig around and open and close windows. I try to avoid that as much as possible. So the one thing that comes in handy when you're using Fantasy Grounds is to get used to the groups, because the groups give you a nice filter to just stay focused on what you're running. If you select the headers, and this goes for all the headers. So in my game, I have all. If you click that, that's everything you own that you have enabled and installed on your system. That's very cumbersome and very distracting. When you're creating stuff, it's probably okay to do this, but if you are actually running a game, you may want to learn how to use the group filters up above. So when I'm setting my game up for the day, I will go to my own entry that I created, and you can create your own header. And so I have the Silvery Moon section here, and this is some stuff that I've worked on for it. It could be anything, but I have it sorted to where it all goes into this heading. And so what you do is you actually create a new heading for your stuff. So there's a little edit button here where it says edit groups. You click that, and just for this tutorial, I'm going to show you where it goes because that's pretty elusive. It actually says group 1, so it makes a default uh, grouping that will say like group 1. I don't know why it does that, but it will. So you hit the edit button and then the plus, and it adds a new category for you. And now you have to scroll and find it. And right there, group 1. So I'm just going to say tutorial, I guess. And that's how you create your own header. And then when you have all that other stuff, when you're in all, you can actually drag it into that header. So right now it's showing everything. That's everything I have in my game. If I click on the group selection, I will go to tutorial, and I'll find it in the list, and I'll just start dragging this stuff into tutorial. So all this stuff, these elements of a game that you're putting together, could potentially go into that header. So that's how you organize all this mess here. I'm assuming that I'm not going to use half of this, but I mean, it's handy if you want to cobble together or piece together a module from several other modules. This is the way to do it. You make your own headers or your own groups, and you drag them in to make your own group heading, and then drag all the stuff you want into there to run your campaign. And I do this, whenever I start a new campaign, I do all this work up front. So normally I collect all my images, all my tokens, all my information that I want to use for my module, and then I will dump that information into one big huge story file. And then from there, I'll work in Fantasy Grounds and link everything together, and I will create kind of like a semi prepared module. I mean, by no means is it complete. It never will be. This is an ongoing homebrew, but I do have enough to run a campaign for a while. So too much prep is not good, and not enough prep is not good either. So for me, I usually prepare just enough to get through the session, and a little beyond and a little before. And I just go back and go through my previous games and see what I've done and what we haven't done, and stuff that I need to work on for my next session. So any questions or comments? Go ahead. I'll mute my mic for a few minutes. Okay, cool. Back to the lesson. Okay, so basically, to get used to making those group headers, So that also exists in all these other sections like quests, tables, encounters, NPCs, all that stuff. If you start getting used to making your own groups for each one of those categories, then it will make your life a lot easier. So for me, I have all my quests, I have all my story templates, and then I also even have notes that I use for different situations. I actually made my own table. Let's see, where is that at? So I have my own currency types here just for notes. I have a tavern table that I made that's linked into my game, and it just gives me information. And I actually made a table for what's sold or what types of items that might come up. And I even have a random table just for the pubs and the bars in my city, so I could actually roll that, and it will come out into the chat window. And that's just for random encounters and information and things like that. Or if people do exploration in a city, I have all this stuff somewhat fleshed out. So if I picked this Greenhorn Tavern, this is something I made. It's new. It doesn't even really exist in Silvery Moon, but in my homebrew campaign it does. And then it's set up as an establishment. Um, I haven't developed all the NPCs yet because it's new. No inventory yet. I haven't connected or linked the locations yet, but there's many ways to link and organize your notes and your stories. So basically, the format that I use for setting up my encounters and setting up my game is I will do one big story, um, and if it's a conversion, I'll just paste it all into one story and link everything from there. If it's something I'm making, I have to do all this by hand. So I made all these quest encounters and for XP and things like that. So I have a DM's helper. So this is just something I made for somebody who wants to help me out in a session. At the end of a session, I reward a DM's helper. I've already made that ahead of time for quests and encounters. I have a short quest XP and I change that depending on the level and where they're playing at. So these are kind of interchangeable. I can change them per game. I'll just go in and switch the number here. I'll unlock it and actually just change the number, and then I'll reward that to my group later on. So I already have all these things laid out for just the role play and just for the quest items that they have to come across in the game. There's really no set value, but I do give individual role play XP. I give them 150 to start with. Sometimes it goes more. I might reward them more than once. I have a long play quest XP goal set up for 1,000 gold, and I could split amongst the party. And then so on and so forth. So I automatically set up all these XP awards based on how I feel the group did. Now, when you buy modules, it may have a set number or it may have a suggested number. Okay, that's fine, but this is for my own homebrew, and this is the way I divvy out role-playing experience and quest experience for my group. So I have those already pre-filled out. If I need to add any later on, I'll do so, and I'll assign a value to it that I think is fair. And if my players make it to the session, if they're there every time, and every time we get a chance to play together, I have these gameplay participation XP. Every time you show up and you play for at least an hour or so, you get 60 XP for my game. It's just the way I do it. I believe in participation, so if you're there, you get extra XP. This appeasement XP was for an encounter, so that really doesn't apply to what I'm talking about. But this was set up for a specific scenario where we had a mental and roleplay challenge with the Red Tiger Uthgard tribe. So when my party went through that particular quest, I awarded it to them and I had this already thought out as to about what I would do for the whole party. So I do individual XP and I also do group XP. I have one for non-fighting problem solving. So if somebody comes up with a good idea to get around a big battle or something that I don't feel like running, I give them XP for that. So these are the types of rewards that I do just for quests. And I kind of like that because it's already kind of figured out. I kind of have my own system. You don't have to do it this way, but if you're running a module and it doesn't have any of those suggested XP values, you're going to have to make up your own. So I suggest you make your own table or your own quest group and create some of those and have yourself some XP set up so you don't have to do it on the fly. So I will actually end up using a lot of these in other games. So it doesn't have to just be for my Silvery Moon campaign. It can be with any campaign. So you can actually set up defaults for yourself so that you can reward this stuff later on. Any questions about the XP and the quests and whatnot? Okay. So anyhow, I set up a big story. I get all my quests laid out ahead of time, and hopefully I have this done before I do my story. So I get all these quests done, and I usually know ahead of time about what all these are going to be. These are kind of my go-to numbers. When they get higher levels or if they first start off, I adjust them accordingly. It just all depends on what's going on in my game. So basically the hierarchy is you have a story, and then the story is built up of encounters and quests. So I have an encounter table that I've created. Like I said, here's the big mess where I don't even want to deal with that. So I'm going to actually filter it to mine. Now these are all my encounters that I've created myself. Some of them I stole from other encounters and just kind of built around them. Some of them are custom. So basically, all these encounters I've created on my own. And basically, all it is just monsters that I plan on using. Traps sometimes. I have just randomly made up encounters. Some are random, some are planned, some are embedded into other tables and whatnot. But basically, I created all these as I went. I didn't have them all done at once. So when I first started this campaign, I probably only had like maybe these null encounters and a couple others. As time went on and the story built, I went ahead and just started developing more. And the reason I did that is because, like I said, if you overplan, you probably won't even use half of them. So all I did was built them based on my next encounter. So I have a game every 2 weeks, so it usually gives me plenty of time to create a few encounters for the next session. Now, I do once in a blue moon steal an encounter from another game or another module, but normally I don't even bother with that. I just like using my own tokens, my own methods of creation, and my own stuff so I know what it is, I'm not surprised, things like that. And that way I can set the CR ratings and the XP for each encounter myself. So that's just a way that I do it for encounters. So you have your big story, which you build at the very end. You build all these encounters, or some of them. You don't have to do them all at once unless you really, really want to get into it or make a module that maybe you want to convert a module or something. That's fine. But normally I would build all my encounters, or at least some of them, and then I'd build some of my quest values here for XP. So both of these actually give experience rewards. So this is for role play, this is for monsters and fighting and stuff like that. And sometimes they go hand in hand, not very often, but you know, if it's like a little like a low level quest challenge, let's say they were supposed to fight some goblins, probably just complete of an easy difficulty or something like that. And if it was actually a quest plot type associated thing, I might reward that depending on what happens in my game, but that's how I do it anyways. Some of these are specific, these encounters. So like we had a situation where we had a haggle with a halfling in the city of Silvery Moon. And if they did it well and they role played it out, and actually we had a special session because it's kind of disruptive when you have your party buying stuff at stores during a game. A lot of people would prefer to handle that outside of the game or a special buying session because it's very disruptive. It takes all day and you're not going to get anything done. Everyone's going to be there with their money going, I want to buy this and I want to trade that. And it just really gets to be a burden. So I set up my own encounter for the store. If there's a role play or a story element there, I will create these little encounter pieces to reward people for role playing. And that includes bartering, getting stuff for cheaper, and also if the store keeper or someone in the store has a story plot point that needs to be conveyed to the party or to the individual PC, that's kind of how I do that. So if you have a buying session going on in your game, I recommend that you do it either outside the game or tell everyone, hey, I'm going to open my server. Here's the store. Go ahead and grab things based on how much gold you have, things like that. So any questions about handling stores or buying and selling and trading? Yeah, so normally in the party sheet, this is where you manage the store and things like that. So from an encounter and from the XP, those values actually get plugged into the party sheet. This is really nice and easy. But basically you have 4 sections that you have to manage when it comes to resources, gold, XP, and encounter XP. So in the tabs to the right on the party sheet, I have all my group of parties members there listed. Um, this is all the big roles for a party role basically down in here. And I usually don't use those, but occasionally if it's like a surprise round and everyone needs to make a save or something, I'll roll there. For the inventory section here, this is where all the stuff gets put in to the game. So from an encounter that we had prior, um, everyone got this type of material from the gold or from the loot, and so all the parcels, which are actually treasure stories, basically. Here I got my own. Here's my really fancy basic loot 2, basic loot 3, and all it is coins and some random stuff that I created for different encounters. Usually it's a potion of healing, a map of Silvery Moon, that would be pretty handy, and a couple other healing potions. So also a few coins here and there. And when I actually drop that into the party sheet, all that material becomes available to look at in this parcel items. The items go here, up in here, and then the coins all go over here. So that's basically how the inventory is managed when your party finds loot or something that they've come across in the game. Unless they specifically say, hey, this is going to be on my character, then I don't. I just drag it to them manually. But this is how you manage your party's loot when the stuff they get together as a team. And then this also shows me the party inventory and the party's coins, so I can kind of keep track of all the stuff that they have as a group collectively. Now, when I drag this, I'll give them a basic loot. This isn't going to hurt anything. I'll drag this over, and it actually changed these values here as to how much material or how much coins they got. This one actually didn't have any items with it, so all the coins just ended up populating this parcel coins, parcel items. So when you make a parcel, keep in mind that coins go on the left, items go to the right, And when you're building your encounter, unless you make something custom, you would just grab some items from the items tab. And let's just say there's an abacus. And let's see, I got to unlock it first. Okay. Yeah, that's one thing. Got to make sure you're unlocked before you edit things. Let's say there's a vial of acid, an alchemy jug, and I don't know, maybe some amber. Yep. Okay. So basically, you drag that stuff over into this basic loot. That's what I call it. You can call it whatever you want, but that's just what I call. That tells me it's really nothing significant or real basic. So then once I'm done with that, I just save that and I put that grouping into the silvery moon heading, so that when I want to go back to it, let's see, that would be in the parcels. So since I changed that and I added some stuff, I would probably change it to basic loot 4 with stuff. So I mean, that's how generic it is. That just tells me that I now have something that has a few little trinkets in there. And then I will go ahead, and when they come across that in a game or in an adventure, I'll go ahead and drag that over right into the party sheet. So basic loot 4, bam, and then all that stuff goes here and all the coins go here. So now I'm going to close some of this so we can see what's happening here. So now this stuff is in the party sheet. So now what happens is at the end of the game, or either before or in a special session, I will get with my group and say, okay, this is your loot that you all collected together, and this is all the stuff that you guys found. And we just kind of vote. They can actually see this usually, this area, and they kind of, I think they can see the coins too. And basically, I say, if there's anything in this loot that you guys particularly want, you will let me know, and you just type their name there. And if you type their name correctly, it'll actually autofill most of it, unless all the names are spelled similarly. So you just go ahead and click on there and assign someone it, or you can have their character sheet open and they can drag the items from the parcel items to their inventory with your permission, of course, and the rest of the party. So a lot of times I'll make them vote on something that they're arguing about or something, and I'll put the vote in there and they have to go ahead and vote on stuff. And that's why I do a whole separate session, because I can't stand that during a game unless it's a plot point and it has to be a transaction that has to occur to keep the story going. This is a separate thing. So anyhow, this percentage is a loot percentage. So let's just say everyone grabbed what they wanted out of here, and now it's time for them to consider what to do with the rest of it. They can either leave it behind, and in which case I'd just delete it, or just leave it in the encounter, or I will ask them, what would your minimum be on the value, and I'd go through it with them and say, okay, the store is willing to pay up to, and I usually say 45% at the most of the value of all these items. And not everything here has a value. So you're not going to get any gold for, there has one that has 1 gold. There's a figurine that's 10 gold. So once you sell everything in here, then it will transfer over into coins. So first I make sure everyone grabs what they want first. And if there's a bunch of junk up here up for grabs, I will give them a value of the store. Sometimes I let them decide and barter on that. And usually I'll take the combined average of their charisma or something like that and do some kind of weird formula to figure out how I want to do this. But for most part, I just say, usually it's no more than 50% value, unless I design an encounter for them to barter. And anyhow, so I just go ahead and hit this sell items. Anything that has like gold piece value would basically populate into the coins here. And right now it's saying unable to determine cost or 0 cost. It's the alchemy jug. Well, it didn't have a value, so it kind of freaked out because there was no gold value. So anyways, this is kind of the way I do the treasure. And then once that happens and all this stuff is cleaned up here, or basically nobody wants it and the store doesn't want it, I'll just delete all the stuff out of here. But now I have a bunch of coins to deal with. Now this is for the party, the whole party, not one person. So once that is done, I will click this arrow in the center and that will distribute assignment and coins right here. So if anyone was assigned something here for their name, would be right in this assignment area, it will assign those items to those characters. So click here. Wow, so all the coins are evenly distributed into the group, and all the items that they were going to get for that encounter are distributed. Now all this stuff is left over from another encounter. I'm not going to re-award them with this stuff. But anyhow, all the extra coins that are left over that cannot be evenly divided amongst the party, they will stay there. And that kind of, for me, becomes like the kitty. The kitty would be just like a group of coins, a little bit of loose change, and when they get more gold and treasure, they can draw off the change, or they can just wait until it converts to gold, or however they want to do it. But as you can see down here in the party tracker and the notes here where the chat box is, it shows you who got what and what was distributed, things like that. So that was basically a big dump of treasure. That wasn't too huge. Our party's like between 4th and 6th level, so I'm not too worried about it. But I know when I play again, they're not going to get any coins for a while because I already gave it to them. So I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. It's just something I'm going to do for the party. So that's that part of the party sheet. So that's how you handle treasure and coins. Now when you go to the order of the party sheet, this is where you would lay out your marching order and also where you would lay out your watch order. So right now, I'm not sure what's going on here, but basically you fill these numbers in with the group watch. You can buddy people up, or you can sign it 1 through whatever the party number is. And basically that's your watch order. So basically what I would do is say, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there's 9 people. So I would roll a 10-sided dice if there was an encounter for that, a random encounter for their rest period. And depending on what number it landed on, it would be that particular watch would be the ones that actually encountered the random encounter first, and then everyone else would be sleeping. So that would help me determine surprise and who gets to act first and whatnot. So that's what that watch order is all about. You can edit it, you can take people off. It all depends on what you're doing. And here I just use this as a little sketch when I don't really have a battle map for a situation. I'll right click. You can use pointers here. You know, it's just these are just little informational maps that don't mean much. They're just basically for notes. There are plugins and extensions out there that will make this look a lot fancier and nicer. I really don't think it's necessary, but I do want to find one that's just a plain grass or forest hex for this situation here. But nonetheless, it's just for figuring out different things in a close area, basically. And then I just use it to get a general idea of how my group wants to march or walk when they're out in the open. So normally I think this guy's up here with her. This is a rogue. He usually skulks off. This is our healer and our druid. And some of these people are not in here because they actually left the area. But nonetheless, that's kind of the party sheet, marching in formation and watch order. So this is kind of where you manage that stuff. And now the other thing is, I don't know why they didn't do this, but they should have put the XP next to the inventory. Not sure why they chose to separate those two. But anyways, here is where I do the pre-made or the custom parcel, they're not parcels, they're actually quest encounters. And so when my group does stuff and I'll drag all that into this awards area or an encounter, like all the combat will go here and all the awards for the quests go here. So for instance, okay, for instance, like DM's helper, I put that here. And let's see, I'll get my encounters back up here. I closed it. Okay, so there's some guards, we'll say. Those go here. So then there's a little button that says AW. Does that mean it asks you, or it tells you if it's been awarded to the group or not? So I would actually click on that one. I've already awarded these two, but this one I have not awarded. So I would click the award button and it actually awards the party 750 XP, and it would actually end up dividing that evenly amongst the group. And if there's any left over, I think it rounds it up or down. I don't remember. Do you, anyone know that? Do you guys know if it rounds up?
Rounds it down. It drops to the lowest.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought. But anyhow, is there any questions so far on the party sheet, how that works? Like I said, there's 4 sections. You have inventory, coins, and items. So that can be magic items or trinkets. And then you have awards for the actual fighting and the awards for the quest items. So there's
what's AW?
AW just tells me if it's been awarded yet. So like down here, I drug this DM's helper. It is not awarded yet. So if I click the award button, which I will, it actually ticks it off. It tells me that I've awarded the party and everyone got 11 XP. So that's all that is. It's just an indicator that you've already dished out those XP points for your party. All right, so that is the party sheet. This is a really handy thing for a DM to use. And the sooner you learn how to use it and activate it, or not activate it, but actually utilize and use it in your campaign, the easier things get for you. Like I said, so I will build all my encounters. I'll build all the quests. I will build my NPCs and turn those into encounters. So let's just say I can make a new encounter right now. So you can hit random up here, and there's content generators out there that will allow you to generate things off of different things that you buy. But for me, there's a content generator. I must have picked this up somewhere, but you can actually just generate your own drow hunting party, for instance. So if you click that, it'll actually make an encounter for you. Or you can simply just go back to the all and drag encounters into your own headings, which would be in here. You can do your own headings in here too as well. So you can change this, make your own custom thing. I tend to have a naming convention so I know what goes to what. So if I was going to do it for my game, I would have called it Silvery Moon Encounters or something. So I would know it goes to that campaign. So anyhow, here's the encounter. It kind of did it randomly for me. You notice there's no CR or XP. I have to unlock that to edit this, and I would say Drow Scout Party or something. I renamed it a little bit.
What's CR?
It is a challenge rating.
Okay.
So there's a little swoosh here where it says refresh. Click that, and it actually gives you a CR rating and the XP value for this encounter. Now the reason why it's so high here, because you got 3 Drow, an elite warrior, a mage, and a Drow priestess. So that's why it's so high. Also here, you want to set these values before you do anything else. So right now it's set to faction. I think in this case, I would go either neutral or hostile. And you change that by changing the color of this little helmet here. And that makes it so where when they're put on the combat tracker, they already have a status. So right now, my group, let's just say they're in a dungeon, they run into an encounter. This is one I made, somewhat planned, and I'll go ahead and actually that challenge rating is pretty high. I probably wouldn't throw that against them, although I think they, as a team, they can handle it. However, when you want to add that to the combat tracker, you can do it one by one, drag them over, but the smarter way to do it, I think, is to add the encounter to combat tracker. You click that arrow, all those drow that were in that encounter went to the combat tracker automatically. So here they are. And it actually put in their initiatives for them automatically. So for round one, all their initiatives were figured out. I think you can turn that off or on in the options. If you don't want that, you could, I think it's down in here on the house rules. I don't remember, but you can, I think you can turn that off for initiative. Let's see. I think it's in here where basically it says, I think an auto NPC initiative and auto numbering, things like that. You can play around with these settings, and I think it changes that. But if you do it as a group, that's what you're going to get. If you turn that off, I don't think it's going to assign these values, and you do it manually yourself. So for this encounter, I would just simply go to the menu, click the initiative. There's a radial menu that comes up. This is also where you do your resting. I owe my party a short rest, so I'm going to do that now. So there's a short rest, a long rest. I'm going to go ahead and give them a short rest because our last session I didn't do that. Oh, Fantasy Grounds, Syrinscape's trying to come up. Okay, so basically these drow are now in the combat tracker. I rested everything, so that's why they don't have an initiative here, because they rested too, apparently. And then I would click this, and let's see. I would click the menu, click initiative. You can either roll all the NPC initiatives, you can roll all the PC initiatives yourself, or you can clear them all with this circle here. So I'm going to do that now just in case. Okay, all the initiatives are cleared. So now I'm going to go back. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Click initiative and roll. You can do all at once or just roll for the bad guys, and then you can have your group do their own individual initiatives. Now, in certain situations, I will roll for them if it's one big surprise encounter or something like that to keep the game moving. But normally I let them do their own. They feel more at ease if they're able to do their own. Well, I don't think it makes a difference mechanically, but it does to the player. So anyhow, so I'm going to roll the initiatives on the NPCs. And as you can see, the numbers are now populated up there. And now I'm going to roll for all of the, hold on. I'm going to roll for all of the NPCs. So here, initiative, roll the PC initiative, excuse me. And now that rolled all their initiatives. So now the combat tracker is set up in order, in the order of combat. So this drow would go first, and so on and so forth. You can turn on the option to do random initiatives on every turn. I don't recommend that in the beginning when you're first starting off. If you're experienced and you've done this long enough, you could probably pull it off. But sometimes it's best to just keep it in the order until you get used to it, and then you can turn on those fancy initiative options. I know I saw Geo doing that. What do you think of that?
I only use it in my my Delvers, my one-shot game, because pretty much from the time they enter the table until whatever quest they're doing is over, they are going round by round initiatives. So somebody who rolls really, really well at the beginning would otherwise, be going first or whatever throughout the entire thing, and then somebody gets screwed on their initiative. So I have them the auto thing done, so that way it just redoes it every round, so everybody has this feel of the chaos of combat.
Okay.
But it works well.
Yeah. So, anyways, there is a new option that came out where you can have it re-roll every turn or every round, and it'll re-roll instead of keeping the same order all the way through. I kind of like it this way because it lets me plan a little better, but it somewhat takes the realism out of the combat too. So,
Do you know where that option's at?
Excuse me?
Do you know, is that option in the settings?
Yeah, actually, it's new. It's included in the 3.3 update. It is, I believe, towards the bottom, and it will show. Let's see.
Yep, it's all the way down in the house rules, down towards the end. It's the 1, 2, 3, fourth option in house rules.
Roll initiative each round. You can turn that on or off. Another thing, since we're here, is you want to turn on the auto death rolls if you don't want to keep track of the death rolls. Also, I would recommend the fumbles and criticals. That makes the game more interesting. Those are the only other things that I would turn on here. I don't know. If you guys know of some, I don't think I would mess with that too much. These are the token information here. You'll have to play around with that and see what you like. You can actually have the status showing like a video game as to what the damage of the enemies are. In my case, I just use a dot and it's not detailed. So if they see that the creature has a yellow dot or it's green, that means they're still good. The yellow is kind of wounded, orange is hurt, and like red is near death, basically. So there's ways to turn those on and off. And you could turn them off completely if you don't want the party to know and you want to use description as opposed to the video game indicator. I do both, so. So you got to get used to these options here. Everyone's going to be different. They're going to have their own preferences. But basically, you can read up on these online. I believe it are in the manual also. I just kind of played with them. No one really taught me how to do that. But there's one thing I did want to mention while we're here is the dice manual entry. Now, if you're running your own table and you want to use Fantasy Grounds just to keep track of certain things, and you want to actually physically have your players roll dice at a table, you can turn that on, and that will allow for you to manually enter the results that your players roll. I think it's a little bit more work, but I don't want to take the dice out of somebody's hand either. That's a good feeling sometimes. So I would definitely consider using Fantasy Grounds for tabletop role playing now that I kind of getting a better idea how to use it. You can put it up on your widescreen for the map. You can use the manual dice entry to record results. You can hit go and basically use the combat tracker to keep track of whose turn it is. So Fantasy Grounds just isn't a virtual tabletop. It could also be a tabletop tool. So you can incorporate this in your face-to-face games. And I've seen people with 84-inch monitors mounted into tables, and they sit around and physically roll the dice, but they use the maps and the combat tracker to keep track of things. And normally the DM will have a laptop or a tablet, and he'll just run that, and then everyone else sees the big 84-inch television that's countersunk and nicely laminated into the top of the table or mounted onto a wall. So depends on your style of play and what you're going to do. I actually want to implement this system someday. I'm going to try it. I haven't done it yet, but I want to try a face-to-face with some old friends and see if they like it. So any questions so far? Okay. So
Can I ask, I got here late.
Okay.
And I don't know if you've touched on the icons on the right-hand side yet.
These here?
Yeah. I had a quick question. If I could save it to the end, I don't want to hold everybody else up.
No, let's do it.
That's
why we're
I've been trying to incorporate Syrinscape for a while. I see you have a sound
Yeah,
button or whatever. Is that use Syrinscape to that?
yeah. Actually, basically, I have a module that I bought from the DMs Guild.
And that'll go ahead and run that through?
Yeah, and you have to have where it says options here.
Yeah.
It says sound. You need to enable that, and that'll actually bring that little sound button out. If I turn it off,
Yeah, I don't have that option on mine.
yeah. So you have to have the module, and it should be enabled first. The sound module.
Where do you get the module at?
You could get it on the DMs Guild that I know of. I don't think there's any other place that do anyone else know where to buy the sound module from? I got mine from the DMs Guild. Rob 2E has one. There's another
Yeah,
one.
I got mine from Gwydion, and while they were all developing it, so I have mine from there.
Where's what is that an actual website, DMs Guild, or?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me write that down.
Oh yeah.
Because I'm trying to incorporate that in my game, but
you can use it for you can put a PayPal account, and basically you would use it to buy little third-party things, and most of them aren't that expensive. I mean, I think the most expensive thing I bought up there was like 20 or 30 bucks, and that because it was artwork. Anytime you buy art, it's usually pretty expensive, but usually tables and PDFs and things like that are really cheap on there, sometimes free. So I recommend you get yourself familiar with the DMs Guild, especially when you're starting out. Now, for me, I'm slowly migrating to doing my own stuff and working with different people that already can do that stuff.
Can you tell me the name of that thing, the mod?
Let's see if I can get that open.
Because I'm at their website now.
So here again, what we learned in Character Creation 101 is you go to the library, and as you can see to the right, I have all those different banners open. That's because I have the all selected. If you go to just create PC, you're not going to see the sound button. So you got to make sure all is selected first. And I'm going to see what I have. There's Fantasy Ground Sounds. That's one of them. And I believe that's Rob 2E's. Let me see. Information. It has the instructions, useful links. There's a wiki page. There's, let's see, who did this? Yeah, this is Rob 2E's. So it says sign on to Rob 2E Discord, become a patron. Here's more information from Rob 2E at the DMs Guild. So you click that, takes you straight to his stuff, which is clever. And then it's already filtered out to Rob 2E. And I believe it's in here. There it is right here. It's $10. Totally worth it. And I'll show you what it
I'm looking at it right now. It says Fantasy Ground Sounds. Is that it?
Yep. Okay. And you click on here more to find out more about it. And I've already purchased it, but it'll kind of give you an idea of how this was set up. And all it does is trigger the sounds from Syrinscape.
Okay. I don't want to hold everybody up for that. I just
you have to subscribe to Syrinscape too.
Yep, I already got it.
Okay. And just then what it does,
typing it in's been the problem.
Right, and I don't mind going through some of this because this is the unique stuff. This is the stuff that not a lot of people want to mess with. But here the sound is right on the right hand side. You click that, and on the right hand side you'll have a bunch of options here, kind of like your character sheets do. And there's a thing called chat sound. Oh, wow. Now all this stuff here is all set up in Fantasy Grounds to be triggered from usually this chat window. So if a certain phrase comes up here, like melee attack dagger or something, it'll be embedded in the properties of the sound. So it has, the trigger is damage, armor of Agathis. If you click that, it has basically that is a link straight to Syrinscape. There is also the trigger itself. Now you can make your own as long as you know and how to associate it in here. But what Rob 2E and them have done is they've taken most of the things and added their own strings, and it's pretty handy because all this is done for you. When this first came out, you had to do it yourself pretty much. You had to go and associate the sounds yourself. I made a few, like I had a bear form. So when somebody activates their form of a bear for the, let's say, a druid, I had it trigger form of a bear. Well, that's, I believe, in his character sheet. Let's see, I got to bring that up so you guys. We created an effect, and basically that would trigger based off the effect. So if that form of a bear ended up down here in the chat window, it would trigger a bear growling. Let's see. Okay, so in this case, it was Azel the Druid. He actually has that wild shape. So I click on that, and in the Actions tab, I believe we created something for his bear. Let's see, where is that at? Okay, right here. There's the brown bear, and there's the dire wolf and otter form. Those are the forms that he can take. And we have that set up as a usage. So in prep mode, I have it set to where he can use it twice, his wild shape twice a day based on his level and the type of build he has. But basically, in this mode here, when he activates one of these powers, so this basically changes his stats based on whatever creature he has, and we apply that effect to him, and then these are the different damages and the attacks and rolls that he makes in each one of those forms. So basically, if he does a bite attack, and it'll say, or if he changes to form of a bear, like if we actually click that, he's not in the combat tracker. I didn't drop it in the combat tracker, but basically the string there, the letters of the string would trigger that sound. So our trigger sound in this case is form of a bear. Well, if you go into the actual effect description, form of a bear, and it has the other syntax for his form, and that form of a bear actually triggers this trigger up here. Does that make sense?
Check.
Yes.
There
are videos and tutorials and people out there that do this stuff, and I would recommend you watch Rob2E's videos if you haven't already. Obviously, you're learning a little bit here, and it's a real pain in the butt at first, but once you get it all set up, it's pretty sweet. All right. Well, anyways, that's the sound. And I think what we'll do is in the future, we'll do a sound tutorial just break it off into another section or something. Anyhow, this is kind of the first time I'm doing this. This kind of gives me an idea of how I want to proceed. I know I've made a lot of mistakes. I'm jumping all over the place, but basically I just wanted to show you guys what I'm seeing on my side, and you guys can kind of go from there as to how you want to tackle your own campaign. But the combat tracker is something that a lot of people misuse or they misunderstand, and I'm one of them. I still make mistakes. I sometimes I don't realize that this little pointer here, you can drag it up, and that selects whose turn it is. When you want to advance their turn, you click next actor, and when I ask my players if they will advance it when they're done, and sometimes I have to do it for them. But basically, that keeps track of your rounds. So before you start a combat, make sure your rounds are set at 1, unless it's carried over. I mean, it's one of those things where you have to kind of watch what you're doing with it as far as the rounds go. But I'll done a set up a small encounter just to kind of give you guys an idea of how this works. So I have a map that I made of a dungeon, and I actually created it on Donjon, and I just used it for my campaign. Real quick and easy and dirty. So let's see. I'm going to go to my images and maps. And as you can see, I have a ton of them, hundreds of them. And what I'm going to do now is click my own Silvery Moon campaign. Here again, I organized my mess. And I have a something that you could do to make this easier on you too. Now, as you can see, I have quite a few for my own campaign. And that's a pretty good list. It's actually 2 pages.
And the P stands for player share?
Yep. And
Okay.
if you right click it, you can unshare it, and that will cut down on your resources. So if there's a map, I'm sure there's something in here that I don't need, like this, I don't need to share.
What's the book or the pencil next to the P?
I believe that is something that's, let's see, it comes from a product.
Okay, thanks.
It's something that I purchased that I'm actually using in my campaign. As you can see, I only use a couple. So let's just do, let's see, let's see, okay. So here's a map that I would use in a campaign possibly. And I just want to say the drow are going to ambush the party. So this is the map. Okay, I don't remember what I did with that encounter. Let me check out. So new, probably in the new. Yeah. So whenever you make an encounter yourself, it usually drops it into new. But I believe that was in random. So new, nope, didn't keep it. Anyway, so basically I'm gonna go ahead and let's see, what's that? Okay. Basically, if I had that encounter set up correctly, you can do it a couple ways. Like, I'll just say, let's see, like these Odiugs, I would place those in the combat tracker first. Then it would populate up here in the combat tracker. Then from the combat tracker, I would take it and put it down on the map. If you don't do it in that order, it kind of breaks the links, and it won't work correctly in your session.
Well, that's not exactly true.
Okay.
I'm not sure. Can you guys see my tabletop right now?
Okay. Let me see.
Yes.
Okay. Like for example, here's my encounter that I have for some gas and ghouls that go into this room that's right here in the center of my screen.
Okay.
I created my encounter, and I have all of my creatures set in here. You know, 5 gas, 1 ghoul, and I put the NPCs into this specifically. Then the tokens that are underneath your creature, you drag those and put those out on your party map. So when you actually hit the add encounter, the combat tracker, not only does it pop up in your combat tracker, it also automatically places your tokens on the map exactly where you want them. It's a simple step that you just use to set up in advance.
Yeah, I was going to say I do it both ways. I was going to show them how you can use the little helmet to drag them for like random encounters. So you
I understand what you're trying to go for there, but if you're going to be doing pre-planned encounters,
right, that's the way to go. Yeah,
this is the way to do it. If you're going to be doing random encounters that are kind of on the spur of the moment kind of thing, then yeah, go ahead and drag them from the combat tracker into your map at that point.
Real quick,
you can do it all at once.
On the on what you guys are showing, you guys are using it looks like round pogs. If you want to substitute actual tokens for those, you just drag and drop them on top of the combat tracker, then drag the token over, right?
Sort of. So basically, you have to build your. Okay, we got to back up a little. So you got to build your encounter. So go back to the desktop. For the one I was showing you guys earlier. So basically, this creature here was randomly generated from a table that I made. It's an Otyugh. Okay, this particular Otyugh is something that I think I used a token for my own stuff. I don't remember. But when you have a creature such as these are already made. If you want to switch the tokens up and not use the generic or the pogs, then you would click your NPC, and let's just say you want to use a blue dragon or something, or black dragon. It comes up, it has its own little pog. Okay, that's what comes with it. That's pretty nice. I don't mind that one. But there are some ugly ones out there that just have the letter P or D for dragon. So basically, I can't click that open because this is an official Wizards of the Coast item. Okay, this was purchased, and that's kind of to protect it. But what you can do is take the same black dragon, drag it back into your NPC list, and it becomes a new instance of the adult black dragon. So now when I click it, it is basically considered custom. I can unlock it and I can change the values. Okay. Now this is where you would assign a new token. So right now it has this one. Okay. I go to my tokens. I have a collection. Let me see if I have any dragons. So I have a black dragon and I substitute it with that one.
Yep, that answers it. I appreciate it. That's what I was looking for is, do you, you guys are doing it, in this case, you're doing it before the encounter to set everything up. I used to do it during the encounter. I'd realize, oop, I've got the wrong tog, and I'd switch it out.
Work.
No, I understand. You're right. I appreciate it. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, so if you want to steal, or actually you're not stealing if you bought the stuff, but if you want to borrow stuff from the official Wizards of the Coast, you can, but you have to drag the creature back into, you have it out here, right? And you drag it back into the NPCs, and it'll create a new entry. And what I do here is when it says new, I see these are all stuff that I created, the bar wench, and she actually she was a humanoid, but I rebranded her. I changed her around a little bit. I gave her a special melee weapon attack, which is a mug. So she can throw it at you or she can hit you over the head with it. I was preparing for a big barroom brawl. So I use this token for her. This is a custom token that I collected. So I didn't have a token. It just said B for barmaid or something like that. But I created this off of a template or an already created NPC and just altered it a little bit here. And so then what I would do is take it and put it in a header of my choice. So I have a filter. So Silvery Moon, I'd probably put her in here. So I'll do that right now. I don't see her in here. Spell Guard, nope. So that encounter was actually, I forgot to drag it in here. So that encounter, I will go back to new and I will click this so I can see the list. And where is it? Silvery Moon right here. I will take that and drag the bar wench into Silvery Moon. And I will take the Silverwatch Guards and the Kobold Scale Sorcerer and another guard and so on and so forth. Now those are all in the Silvery Moon encounters. Those are now custom also. Most of these are not standard anymore. I've altered them. As you can see, they got their own tokens. They are stuff that I'm going to use for my encounters. Tokens are something that I kind of was picky about them at first. I like all the fancy tokens that I have here, but they're harder to see on the battle map. So unless you have a black and white, easy to see battle map, a grid, which I recommend that you have, just a plain old grid, like plain old grass field or a dirt field or something with nothing else on it, that's handy to have one of those. But anyhow, I notice if you use the pogs, they show up better on your battle maps usually. If you use these fancy ones, these three-dimensional top downs, they're really hard to see in some cases, especially when you're getting older. That's just and this is a trap, I guess, or cloud of daggers. So I have tokens for spells and all kinds of fancy stuff, but basically it's not worth, sometimes the looks aren't always worth the reward, so to speak. So pogs tend to me to be a lot easier to use. They're easier on the eyes. Okay, so anyways, that's the token thing. Let's see. So there's my custom black dragon. Now I would actually rename it to the actual dragon's name and not just adult black dragon. I'd probably in parentheses I'd put its actual name there. I would switch a few of these around, change the stats a little bit for the party. I might give it a different spell or two, things like that. All right, so basically that's how I run a majority of my game. I'm the one that I created for myself. Now everyone has their own style. Like I said, there's something in the maps and images though that I wanted to show you to make things easier for you. As you can see, they're all in a list. They're not random. So like map. I usually do that as a naming convention. So right here, this is a map I used. I'll unlock it if it's not a store-bought one. And I will go ahead and put map, comma, whatever it is. That way, when it goes into your list, it's organized. It's there. So I know those are maps. I have my NPCs pictures. These are just pictures that I've collected that I'm using for encounters to show for handouts for my characters. There's just all kinds of weird little pictures and photos that I've collected over the months for my game. I've got pictures that come from all different sources. And I don't sell this stuff. I just use it in my own campaign at home. A lot of this art is not cleared for distribution. So I just, and then I make my own table sometimes. It's not a very good one, but sometimes I'll just put some reference notes because a lot of people get mad about hiding and stealth. There's some cheat sheets. Just images that I've collected for Silvery Moon. This was actually an encounter that we had in our game where we were attacked by werewolves in the middle of the night. More pictures in Silvery Moon. So you get the idea. I just went through and I try to find what would make sense for my campaign as far as images go. And what I had done is I found a program. When we get done, I'll give you a handout that I use for tools to help make all those image collecting a lot easier on you. It's a lot better if you had a commissioned artist or if you just willing to pay for the commercial license, which costs a lot more. But if you want to broadcast and use this stuff to make money, you might want to think about that. But for the most part, it's not a big deal. No one's going to say anything. So is there any questions about what we talked about so far? Okay. So basically that's how I organize my images and maps. So I have a naming convention that I made up for myself that allows me to organize the images so that they're not a big mess. Because before I had stuff all over the place and I could not find what I was looking for. So I have an icon thing. I use that for just like flair and for, you know, sharing with my players. I have, you know, like a bow or something that they found. I actually can make my own cards. They look like the old spell cards from Magic the Gathering. I'll make little spell cards and stuff for the items. Let's see. So this is actually a campaign map that I made, and I just kind of drew on top of it in layers. And right now these are encounters and different things that have happened over the course of my campaign. As you can see, a lot of action along the river here. Also, there's Silvery Moon itself, and then I have all my pins set here. I have little reminders, like we had a big Knoll battle right there, and that was actually the encounter. I clicked on the pin, it was already set up. For the ruins, I had that set up already, a battle map there. And anytime I created something that wasn't built, I would link it here so I'd remember what happened and what was going on in that particular location. So after the game session, I'd come back to the map and update it a little bit and then re-share it to myself and re-swap it out with the old one. And so I have a generic map, and this actually has locations about the towns, and I did these all myself. I didn't write them myself, but I copied and pasted them and built them on the wikis and stuff that I had in books. And then some of them I had to make myself, but basically these are all different encounters that have occurred or will occur throughout the game. And let's see, where is that? So I have different maps, more than one for each area. So this is a Silvery Moon map that shows the districts. This is a more detailed map that I share with my group when they're traveling through I don't share the whole thing, but I share some of it. And I have a little pins set up. So if they go to these locations, which I haven't finished this map yet, but you click on that, there's the view of the area that they're looking at. So if they're looking off the shore or onto the shore here, that's what they would see. Just stuff like that. This is kind of how I organize the map. So lots of times I don't have things always set up, but at least I have it organized enough to where I could just draw upon all these images. So that makes things a lot smoother if you can do it that way. If you do it on the fly, it takes a little bit more work and you're juggling around a lot more stuff. But basically that's my map that I shared with the players. Once they explored the region, they kind of have an idea of what's what now. Let's see, this is Ravenwatch Keep. I just stole that from, I think that's actually from another game. Some of you might recognize that map or that image. This was actually an encounter that they had to go across the river and it was damaged. We just called it Crosswatch, and this is like where close to where the campaign started, and they had trolls and things like that camped out on this side down below here. And then there used to be a bridge. It was destroyed during the Orc Wars, and there's a damaged boat here. There was an old shack boathouse, and it looks to me like this map, yeah, this was set up as an encounter. I don't even think I ended up using the map. So there's a dead horse there, there's some other stuff. So I kind of made this in one of the Dungeon Painter software. So I used stuff from modules, stuff from the internet, and stuff I made by myself for this campaign. So I grabbed basically whatever I can to make it fit for my campaign. So here's Ravenwatch Keep. It overlooks the river. It's this, oh, no, that's the wrong one. Let's see. Yep. So basically that's the keep photo that I chose to use. And so basically, you kind of have to piece this together if you're going to make your own. If you're going to run a module, a lot of the stuff is laid out for you, and all you'd have to do is just click over to the group folder and filter it out, so you don't have all this extra stuff that you don't need. If you just plan on running something that you purchased. For this campaign, I think I have about 3 months invested into it, at least for work. Not 3 solid months, but it's probably a good couple hundred hours put into it already. So it's just a matter of time, pacing, having stuff set in place. I mean, you could literally just, if you get some of the images and the encounters and all those parcels and all that stuff done first, you honestly have basically what you need to run the game. So there is an extension that I use to organize my locations. You won't see it in a standard interface, but I'm using Deluxe's locations plugin. It has a base and it has some other add-ons that go to it. But this is the locations add-on that he uses. I like it because you can link everything together a lot easier. So basically what this does is you have portals, you have your cosmos. So in this case, I called it my world. You have your planes of existence, which I haven't done yet. Your game system, the world. So if you were going to have Greyhawk, you could put it in here and give some information about it. For towns, you would put, like I have Settlestone now as a town. It's part of Mithril Hall, which is another location. You put your NPCs in here. You can link a lot of stuff together from these. So that's kind of why I like this plugin. Even though it's not an official one, I kind of appreciate it. I don't know, have you used that before? Anybody use that? Okay. So basically,
I've used it a couple of times. It's actually not too bad.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. The only problem is you have more chances of things breaking. So if you center your whole module around that plugin, it can really be a risk, because maybe down the road it won't be supported or something may happen. I don't know, but it's easier to break. The more links and things that you have in your game, the easier it is to break it, as far as getting corrupted database, things like that. I've noticed that. Another thing I want to warn you about is when you're backing up your campaign folders, and you should do this at least every other week or every time you're finished playing, I would actually store it on a thumb drive. I'd take the entire content of the campaign folder and maybe a couple other files and drag those onto a thumb drive and just let them stay there until you're sure that your computer isn't going to hiccup on you and crash. If it does, it'll at least have a majority of your work saved. Some people use Google Drive to sit. I don't recommend that. It does something. It can screw up the way it syncs. Just put it on a thumb drive or burn it to a disk and label it properly, and then you'll have a backup. So if you have to reinstall Fantasy Grounds, you have that work there. And that's a big to do for backing up campaigns. You need to get in the habit of doing that, especially if you put as much work into this stuff. It can really be a nightmare. There are ways to recover your system when you have a database failure. Quite often, though, it's because you played around with the directories, or maybe an antivirus has blocked something from your folders. Whatever causes it, it basically tells Fantasy Grounds it doesn't know where to go, what to point to. And when all your links are messed up and jumbled, and you start changing file names and moving photos around after you've already set up the links, you're going to break your module, and it's going to be pretty tough to recover it. So just remember, I learned the hard way. I was able to recover some of it, but I had already made a bunch of changes before I realized how to recover. So I really screwed my whole campaign up. I probably lost a month's worth of work. So that's a caution that I tell all the gamers and the especially DMs. Don't screw with the directory in Fantasy Grounds. It's okay to add to it, but don't take away unless you know exactly what you're taking out of there. Because if you have a bunch,
where do
go
you
ahead.
drop this thing? I went ahead and purchased and downloaded
Okay.
It says Fantasy Ground Sounds. Where does
Yeah.
that? What file does that go into?
Okay. In most cases, did you buy yours from Steam or not?
No, I just bought it. Fantasy Grounds?
Yes.
No, right from the Fantasy Grounds site.
Okay, good. Okay, so it's in a directory. If you go to your C drive, just a
Okay.
basic C drive,
Okay.
and you go to users,
Okay.
and then your name, whatever that is,
Okay.
and then I believe it's a data folder.
No, there's nothing here. Like that.
Okay, it's probably hidden.
It's probably the app data folder, the roaming
Yeah,
app data.
There's an app data folder. You're going to have to set the properties of your Windows to show the hidden files.
You know what? I don't want to hold everybody up. I'll wait. If you don't mind, I'll just bend your ear later. And
No, just do it here. We're here for this kind of stuff. So
I hate holding everybody else up.
But
There's nothing
anyways,
here.
it's in.
I don't
You
see
have
it.
to right click or change the properties of that window,
View.
and you need to view hidden files. There's some options up there. Are you using Windows 10 or Windows
Yeah.
7?
10.
Okay.
I have
Yeah, so-
a very much faster way of doing it for you, if you'd like.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
All right. This is as you look on my screen, if at all. You look at the
Hold
Fantasy
on.
Grounds main,
Just a
okay,
second.
the main
and,
screen.
I'm going to go ahead and separate my screens. Okay, I'm looking at it right now.
Okay. And then what you do is there's a little folder icon.
Yep.
That's right there. That opens up the Fantasy Grounds folder. Right there
I've got
for you.
two folders. Go back. Is it the one at the bottom or the folder to the left of the X?
It's the one below the X.
Okay, got it. It just opened
Yep.
up.
Click on that, and it goes right in for you.
Okay, so where do you put it? In here.
And I believe the sound extension goes under extensions. That's the.
No, this one's a module.
Oh, is it a module? Okay, so that will go into
Yeah,
module.
it goes in the mod folder.
So go ahead and open up the mod folder.
Yeah, drop it in there.
Drop it in there. Okay, it's dead. It's done.
Yeah, and what I recommend you do at this point is rename it. Keep it sound module or whatever, but put a date on it.
Okay, so
Put like 1018 or something. So or something that you'll remember.
10.
That way, if you change anything or you want to re-download the same file or something, you'll know which is which.
Okay, it's there. So it should be inside the game now, or
Well, you have to load your game up, obviously,
okay.
if you haven't already, and then you have to go to the library and you have to enable it,
Okay, let's see.
or you have to activate it. Let's put it that way. Do you remember how to activate stuff, right?
I think so. Wow.
'Cause remember, we did that in character creation.
Activate. Yeah, I do.
So you go to library, then you go to modules, or if it's a new campaign you're starting, that pop-up window will come up, and it will ask you to activate your modules. But anyhow, you would enable it there, and then in the settings in Fantasy Grounds, you would enable the sound. You'd have to say sound on, and it will create a little button that'll say sound. Then you can start playing around with the links and stuff.
Libraries, go to modules.
Yep.
Let's see, where is it?
And there's a bunch of free stuff too, by the way.
Yeah, there it is. There it is. Hit load.
Yep.
And then what about the red X? I want to change that to
Leave it to red X because you're not going to share that with your group, right?
okay. So it's open.
You don't need to see the links, huh?
No, and then go ahead and hit export, or
Just leave it.
leave it. Okay.
Yep. And actually close the library, of course.
Okay, it's closed.
Yep. And now what you do is you go to this. You should change the options to where the sounds are on.
Okay. Let's see, options, client. There's no sounds tab.
Well, click the sounds button or the options. Excuse me.
I did, and I'm looking at it right now.
So it says nothing, huh?
Now under client, should I restart the thing again?
No, I don't think so. Well, did you just do this when you had your session active?
No. Well, I just did it and opened it up. Opened up the library and popped it in there. I restarted the game after I dropped modules in.
Oh, okay. Huh. Does he need Deluxe Oz's extension? Is that what's going on here? I don't remember. But anyhow, um, basically that's how you enable the module,
Okay.
and there are more steps to it than that. But basically that's how you enable the module. But obviously, maybe you do need another extension to make the sound actually appear.
Interesting. All right. Well, I'll work on it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, there's all kinds of forums and YouTube videos and stuff that show you how to do it too.
Check. Appreciate it.
Got to do a little digging, a little research.
Always
If
a
you
little
still
research.
get stuck and you can't figure it out, I'll help you with it later.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so basically, as you can see, I have a lot of Rob stuff, but I'll hand you a thing that I use to create modules and to convert them. It's just a tool list that I use for conversions, and if you want to take things out of other sources, there's some tools to use to make life a little easier on you. If you're just going to make your own stuff, just do it all in Fantasy Grounds. Find all your images, kind of write some notes down as to what you want to accomplish. That's normally what I do. Is I'll make myself a few notes and say I need to do this, work on this area, pay attention to this, and so when I get closer to my campaign time, I'll start working on it and figuring it out. Okay. There is a lot more to actually being a dungeon master. This is just kind of more or less Fantasy Ground stuff. I'm sure there's some things I'm missing, and I want to make this class better. This is just kind of the first time I've done this. What did you guys think of the Google Hangouts thing?
It's not bad. Not bad.
No, it's not bad at all.
Yeah, it kind of works. Yeah. There's a lot more to teach and a lot more to learn. I just kind of give you guys an ideas of how I run my table, how I formulate, all the different pieces, and I'll link them all together. It really depends on your style of gaming. I would recommend you try one of the little short one-off modules. There's a bunch of free ones on the DM's Guild. I would load one of those, make sure you filter all the encounters and the stuff out. So that on the group, change the heading to whatever module you purchased. And start from there. Kind of read through it, look at all the encounters, find out if they're linked to the maps already, those sort of things. That way you'll start getting familiar with Fantasy Grounds itself. And I think the best way to learn is just to do it. We showed you kind of where to look a little bit. We've basically really just scratched the surface. There's a whole ton of other things that I probably left out and I need to add, but I just was showing you how I do mine. You're going to have other extensions and modules and tokens and all kinds of stuff. So it gets any deeper. If you had anything to say, Gio, or add, I'd welcome that.
There is, as you said, there are tons and tons of different extensions out there. It all goes by personal flavor. For example, I don't use a sound extension. I don't like the sound extension. I think it's just a waste of time to add the sound extension in, because it not only do you need the sound extension, you need to have Syrinscape, you need to have what is it, video cable banana or some weird ass third party program. My old potato will die if I do something like that. So it's just a waste of time for me. But there is, like, for example, some people find it a waste of time on the maps to utilize the enhanced images, which gives you multiple layers to put tokens on. There's lots of extensions. My suggestion is go out, find them, download them from the Fantasy Grounds forums, or even over on the Fantasy Ground Discord. Take a look. Deluxe Oz is very, very, very good at making all sorts of extensions, and just take a look at them, see what you like, see what you don't like, and use what you want and discard everything else.
And make sure, make sure that they're not expired or out of date, because some of them are rendered obsolete, or they may not work anymore for the new version of Fantasy Grounds.
Right, like the remove extension. The remove extension no longer works because as of 3.3.3, it's already baked into Fantasy Grounds base
Right.
rules. So
Right, and there's probably a handful of more that don't work for one reason or another. So when you're actually going to look at these extensions and download them, you want to make sure that it's been up to date. And what you do is you go to the very first part of the thread and you read that. And if you're unsure, you message the author or the people that are chatting back and forth and figure out where they're at on it.
yep.
Does Rob keep his stuff up to date?
Yeah,
Well,
he does.
okay.
Pretty good.
Well, let me first say this: the sound extension's not Rob's.
No, I know.
The extension was actually
the other stuff that's out there is because I was just looking at some of his stuff.
Yeah, he doesn't really have a lot of extensions. He has a lot of tables and coding things that he keeps up to date as the new versions come out. But since most of that's all tables and text, there's not a lot of updates that need to go to it.
I see.
Yeah.
Does anybody here, just out of curiosity, anybody ever use? I was talking to. I can't remember. I'm sorry, your name. About campaign choreographer. Anybody ever tried that?
Campaign cartographer.
Cartographer. I keep saying it wrong. I'm sorry.
Yeah, by Pro Fantasy. Yeah, the one with the 600-page user manual.
Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So anyhow, we'll do more of these. This is just kind of preliminary to see how this went. I've never really tried a DM's class until recently, so hopefully we can refine it, and I'll have an actual module to go through, and it will show you the basics more on a scholastic / learning scale, as opposed to jumping all over the place and showing you this and showing you that, because I'm not expecting you to remember all that. So I think what would be cool is if we all had the same module and we would go through each piece of it step by step, and that would probably be a lot more conducive to learning and teaching. So what do you guys think about that?
I think that would work great.
Yeah, so I'll basically give everyone a copy of a homebrew, or even if it's store-bought, as long as we're not sharing it with everyone. And then what we'll do is we'll just dissect it together. We'll go through each step. We'll build an encounter. We'll, and it will be a lot more condensed and a lot less stuff going on. So I think that would help a lot. So any other questions while you got Gio and myself here?
Yeah, I just want to, when you guys get a chance, because like I said, I'm trying to watch these classes and you guys put them on. It's the combat class, going through a combat class, running a group through an encounter and using everything from spells to different weapons in it, and seeing how, because I've got my tabletop game I've run for years, but right. I'm trying to pull everything into here, like I told you before, and understand how to use the combat tracker and how to use. Once you pull up a map, you put an encounter together, and you have them throwing stuff, the area of effect, and how everything tabulates on its own. That's what I was looking for.
Cool. All right. Well, there are other tutorials out there that show how other people do that type of integration.
I've been watching those videos, YouTube videos and all that.
Yep.
Yeah, I've been watching those. But I like this. This is around. I like this because you can ask you guys direct questions. So.
Yep. So anyhow, we'll do more of these after I get a curriculum set up better. I think this was just a one-off type thing. We won't normally have Gio and I in the same room with this type of thing, but you guys are getting the extra special class today. So anyhow, I got to go and make dinner. I thank you guys for showing up.